Among the Reform Party's core principles are balancing the federal budget and paying down the debt. For decades, Democratic and Republican presidential candidates have promised to do just that. But for the most part, when they get into office, they only make things worse. What would you do differently? Mr. Cross.
Right now we have about $16 trillion in debt. In 1980 we had one. In 2000 we had $5.5 trillion. In 8 years it doubled under the Republican administration to 11 and now 16. Right now the situation is that we have low interest rates, but we won't always have low interest rates. The interest rates, when they rise, are going to require additional sums put for payment of that interest on the debt. So we have to do something different. We have to, first off, stop the bleeding, stop the deficits. So in order to stop the deficits, the first thing that we have to do is attack the spending. Right now, the revenues are 16% of gross domestic product, which is as low as they've been in about 50 years. Spending is at 24% of gross domestic product. We have to bring those two numbers together to around 20%, as they were at the end of the Clinton administration when we had some surpluses. So in order to bring up the revenues, we need to discontinue the ill-advised Bush tax cuts and let them expire. We need to also then, on the spending side, there are many cases, but we have to reduce the amount of spending on Medicare. We have to reduce the amount of spending in a number of areas that we'll get into, but we have to have the courage to have a shared sacrifice from a number of parties, really from all of us, if we are to avoid running into a situation like Greece.
Time. Okay, actually, in fairness, because Mr. Cross was not ready for that, extra 10 seconds if you have anything to add to close.
Greece had 1.5% interest on their bonds a few years ago, and now it was over 100% for short-term bonds. We could face that kind of drastic situation if we don't take corrective action.
Mr. Barnett.
We need to be a little more specific in what we're doing. We can't just say we're going to cut costs. We can't just say we're going to increase revenue somehow. We've got to make take decisive action. And the way we do that, number one, again, we've got to bring businesses back to the U.S. We have to bring jobs back. That's how you're going to generate more revenue. We also have to have a series of tariffs. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no way around it. We have got to start taking part in this war that's been waged on the U.S. All of our exports to many countries have tariffs on them. How do we combat that? How can we actually have businesses that are saying, well, it's cheaper to do business in America? Not really. These guys, it costs us so much more to get our products into their countries than it does back into America from their countries. So let's start there. Let's start giving back to the people here, bringing jobs back by decreasing the tax rate, the corporate tax rate. Let's bring jobs back by saying, hey, we're going to give you that tax haven that you have in other countries, and we're going to make it cheaper by making it more competitive here in the U.S. Then we're going to let the taxpayers have something back. We've got to give something back to the taxpayers. They're paying into our system. I also support a fair tax. That means that, or a flat tax, where we're going to have across the board a flat tax on consumption, not on your pay. I don't think that people's paychecks should be taken away from them by the government. I think that the money belongs in their pocket, and as they spend and put back into the economy, that's where we'll get our revenue. We have the fair tax or a flat tax, and then we have our tariff system, and then we have the corporate tax rate. I support a 9% tax rate if they take part in our healthcare premium pay plan, and I support a 12.5% rate if they don't. Everyone needs to be covered. Everyone needs to be covered under the healthcare plan, and if you're giving back to them, if they're paying those premiums, people will actually be more willing to put more of their money into the economy.
Thank you. Mr. Chlapowski.
I also agree that we have to generate jobs in America to get revenues coming back. And my approach, having looked at consumption tax and countries that have consumption taxes, they are selectively subsidizing businesses in order to choose, and you end up with a lot of the same political infighting and handing out of money selectively based on political orientation. And I feel that we need to place a tax on corporations that have left America, and you do this through your corporate tax. I would not give blanket corporate tax rate reduction, because some businesses are bad for America. I look at the Walmart and how they moved all of their manufacturing, basically moved a lot of America's manufacturing overseas through requiring manufacturers to give them a low-cost product, and by placing a 60% tax on Walmart based on imports, and other merchandisers who followed suit with Walmart, you then would give them an incentive to come back if you lower that rate based on their reduction on import to a target you'd like. This will finance training for the workers who have no training. This also gives you the ability to subsidize industries that you want to come back to America.
We can have up to a minute follow-up, beginning with Mr. Cross.
I agree with both these gentlemen about jobs. If we are going to have tax increases, which we will have to eliminate the deficits, if we'll have to have spending cuts, which we will have to, then we have to find a way to not affect the people that are seeking employment and now and that would be then. In order to do that, we need to have a direct approach. Only pay corporations and businesses when they put someone to work. Right now, the way it is that corporate America gets tax credits, expense write-offs, accelerated depreciation, and all sort of loopholes pumped into them, so that with the hope that it will trickle down and create employment, and that corporations and businesses will hire people. That's the wrong approach. Corporations are sitting on around $2 trillion in, that's my knock already? Oh,
The first one is 10 seconds, and then...
Okay, I'll stop.
Okay. Remember, the follow-up is 1 minute, not two.
Okay,
So,
yeah, sorry.
Mr. Barnett.
Well, the thing is, we can't have selective targeted taxation. That's one of the things that we can't do. That really is going to keep businesses from coming back if they believe they're going to be taxed selectively. The other thing that we have to look at is drawing down the size of government. Once we do that and we start to operate within our means, we don't need so much revenue. And that's what we have to get back to. Limited taxation, limited government. That's what our Constitution, that's how our Constitution was constructed and framework. So we're looking at these from different viewpoints, but I also think that the taxes that we are implementing and that we're putting on our taxpayers, we've got to make sure that they're seeing something in return for it. It's not so much about the businesses. Businesses, and that's the other thing, simplifying the tax code, making sure that businesses don't have any loopholes. As I said, 12% or 9.5%, that's all there is. There's no other pieces of legislation for them to lean on. That's how we make sure that everyone pays their fair share.
Mr. Chlapowski.
I think we need to limit the spending. Initially, the challenge is not to generate a depression as we go about reducing the size of government. So to go with the monies that you'll generate through taxing the merchandisers who've actually sold America out, that you need to come back and internalize the cost of government. And that cost of government is internalized through a debit system that modifies the behavior of our representatives in Congress first, by letting them only buy American. And all government workers would be constrained in this way. There's a huge amount of monies that then become internal spending and never reach the global economy.